In the feudal system of Westeros, men were made to be husbands and warriors, while women served as wives and caregivers. This rule was generally agreed upon by the entirety of the realm's population, though there did exist some exceptions. One such deviation was Brienne of Tarth. Hello everyone, and welcome back to Exploring Fiction. Due to her outward appearance and warrior-like nature, Brienne found little acceptance or joy fulfilling womanly roles. As she was so separated from what was expected of her, she struggled to find meaning in her life. This drove her to become a sworn sword to multiple different lords and ladies, and the tasks they placed upon her gave her the purpose for which she so wholeheartedly yearned. So, who exactly is Brienne of Tarth, and why is she such an interesting character? Let's explore. Brienne was born in the year 280 AC to Lord Selwyn Tarth of Evenfall Hall, and an unnamed mother who died before Brienne had any memory of her. Brienne had 3 siblings, an older brother named Galadon, who drowned when Brienne was 4, and 2 younger sisters who died in infancy. With Brienne left as the sole heir to Tarth, Lord Selwyn began to scour Westeros in search of a suitable, lordly man to which she could marry. This proved quite difficult, however, as Brienne took more to the lifestyle of a warrior than a traditional woman. True, she was tutored in the usual ways of nobility by Septa Rowell, but she also studied to be a knight under Evenfall Hall's Master-at-Arms, Sir Goodwin. She especially excelled in the latter. But the other, more prominent reason she failed to find an adequate partner for marriage was one much harder to ignore and much harder to change: her looks. Even as a teen, but especially into adulthood, Brienne of Tarth was quite unfeminine. Over 6 feet tall when her growth finally ceased, she possessed a flat-chested, muscular frame and a face covered in freckles. Her hair was the color of straw and hung just above her shoulders, and her teeth stood striking and crooked beneath swollen lips. Her nose took on the bulging appearance of it having been broken numerous times, and her eyes shined bright, large, and blue. Her hands were rough and calloused like those of a warrior. Covering up her masculine-leaning features, she adopted, instead of a dress, an azure velvet doublet with matching breeches, boots, and a sword belt. On top of that, she donned her signature dented cobalt blue armor, and carried a sword at her hip. Whenever she attempted anything resembling femininity, she was met with mockery or pity, and so she turned to the way of the warrior. And while still ridiculed, she felt more at home. But first, Brienne was betrothed 3 times, and each ended in failure. Her first potential husband was a younger son of Lord Brian Cairn, but before they were married, he perished from a chill, along with most of his family. Her hand in marriage next fell to Sir Ronnet Connington, who broke off their plans with a rose and harsh words. Brienne's final betrothal was to Sir Humphrey Wagstaff, who ordered her about and made certain she knew what was expected of her in marriage. Brienne, at that point in life growing accustomed to the freedoms of a knight, claimed that she'd only stand to take demands from a man who could best her in combat, and so a duel commenced. When the dust settled, Brienne stood victorious, with Sir Humphrey writhing about with no fewer than 3 broken bones. Their betrothal was no more. Utterly exhausted by his daughter's ill fortune, Lord Selwyn gave up in finding a suitor for Brienne. She, however, was not devoid of all love. On his tour of his liege lands, Lord Renly Baratheon visited Tarth and met Brienne, who he treated with kindness and compassion. Though the moment was fleeting, Brienne remembered it forever, as it was the first time an encounter with a man seemed to trend positive for her. Brienne fell in love, and even was bade to visit Storm's End once by her father. It was a foolish love, though, as Brienne could only watch as Renly soared to towering prominence that dwarfed her own. At the onset of the War of the Five Kings, Brienne traveled to the camp of King Renly, all the way from her father's hall at Tarth. However, her king had been married to Lady Margaery Tyrell, and so Brienne could only serve from the ranks of his army. The other knights mocked her as she shed tears over Renly's wedding, and they began to take bets on who could court her first. Irritated at the distraction overtaking his men, Lord Randyll Tarly put a stop to it all, but confessed that he believed Brienne brought it upon herself by her mere presence in the camp. In the story depicted in A Song of Ice and Fire, Brienne is first seen brawling in the melee at Bitterbridge, where she uses a Morning Star to defeat Sir Loras Tyrell, as well as multiple of Renly's other greatest fighters. As Brienne stands before Renly, she asks only as her prize the privilege to serve him as a member of his Rainbow Guard. The king grants her request, gifting her the name Brienne the Blue and a rainbow cloak he'd been saving in hopes of an appearance by Sir Barristan Selmy. As Catelyn Stark first meets with Renly on behalf of her son Robb, the king in the north, Brienne reminds her to give Renly his due respect as rightful king, but grieves as Renly bids his guard to hold back as he talks with Catelyn. Never wishing to be far from her king's side, Brienne later rides as Renly's standard-bearer during his parley with Stannis, which fails thoroughly. Her king bids her to bear the same task in the battle the next day, to ride beside Sir Loras holding the flag of the true monarch of the Seven Kingdoms. Brienne agrees, and at dawn the following morning, she enters Renly's tent to aid him in donning his armor for the battle. Catelyn is there, still attempting to reason with Renly, when a shadow of ghastly human form seeps through the tent and assassinates the youngest Baratheon king. The form dissipates, and Brienne and Catelyn are left to fend for themselves as Sir Emyn Coy enters the tent and beholds the foul display. Brienne fights off her fellow Rainbow Guard with Renly's own sword, and Catelyn convinces Sir Robar Royce of the Tarth Maiden's innocence. When Catelyn and the young wolf's envoy flee from the camp, Brienne joins them for her own safety. Back at what remains of Renly's camp, Sir Loras slays fellow members of the Rainbow Guard in a rage, and Brienne is among those accused of killing Renly, though there are some who defend her honor, citing her utter devotion to the man as proof of innocence. As Renly's forces either retreat back to the Reach or fall into rank with Stannis, Brienne receives new clothes from Sir Wendell Manderly of the North, keeping only her rainbow cloak and the sword of Renly Baratheon. She returns with Catelyn Stark and her envoy to Riverrun, and pleads leave to take revenge on King Stannis by killing him with Renly's sword. Catelyn alternatively persuades Brienne to enter her personal service, and Brienne pledges her sword to Lady Stark. The Maiden of Tarth remains at Riverrun during the Battle of the Fords, and accompanies Catelyn down to the dungeons, where she speaks with the captive Sir Jaime Lannister. When Catelyn asks for her sword, Brienne does not hesitate. The next novel, A Storm of Swords, finds Brienne on the road once more, this time accompanied by the Kingslayer and Sir Cleos Frey. For when Catelyn Stark received word of the death of her sons Bran and Rickon in the north, she feared for her children that still remained more than ever. So, Lady Stark tasked Brienne with bringing Sir Jaime back to King's Landing alive, thus fulfilling her side of the bargain struck with Tyrion. In doing so, the Lannisters would now owe Catelyn, Arya, and Sansa in return, and the Lannisters always paid their debts. And so, with a prisoner and an unsympathetic companion, Brienne set out to the capital of Westeros, intent on carrying out the wishes of her master. Given the circumstances, Brienne keeps Jaime well hidden and well guarded, and while the exchanges between the two begin with disdain, they eventually come to respect each other and form a strange bond. While Sir Cleos hovers in the background, Brienne and Jaime discuss their lives and their histories, while also throwing about witty banter. The trio begins their trek by way of water, and Brienne demonstrates her prowess once more when she scales the side of a riverside cliff and drops a boulder onto a pursuing ship of river-run knights. Now left alone on the river, Brienne and her companions travel along the Red Fork for some time, though they eventually dismount back onto dry land. Reaching the Inn of the Kneeling Man, Brienne faces yet another test. The innkeeper dishes out advice for how to best reach King's Landing, but the man is in league with bandits, and Brienne's caution staves off the danger awaiting the group had they heeded the man. Instead, the trio follows a path that leads them to the Duskendale Road, and are ambushed near Maidenpool by bandits anyway. In the chaotic din of battle, Cleos is killed, and Jaime makes his move. Snatching up his departed relative's sword, the Kingslayer duels Brienne. Though in chains and rusty from his lengthy captivity, he finds he cannot beat her. Eventually, the Maiden of Tarth wrestles Sir Jaime to the ground and holds his head underwater, but their quarrel is interrupted by the brave companions. Beaten away from her charge only by the efforts of 4 bloody mummers, who knock out 2 of her teeth, Brienne can only watch in protest as Zolo the Fat Dothraki chops off Jaime's sword hand. Brienne and Jaime are bound and taken captive, and the latter is drained of all will to live, as if his soul was cut off from him at the same moment as his hand. Though they aren't quite yet friends, Brienne hardly wants to see Jaime perish, and convinces him to cling to life if only to take revenge on those who wronged him. And in turn, the Kingslayer stays the brave companions from violating Brienne. While they don't fulfill their pleasures, the bloody mummers do take the opportunity to plunder Brienne's possessions, taking her armor and Renly's sword for themselves. The brave companions transport their new prizes to their current base of operations, Harrenhal, and while there, Brienne and Jaime share a bath. During this intimate occurrence, Jaime explains to Brienne the real story behind why he became the Kingslayer, and she realizes that although he's an oathbreaker, he's more complex than she originally imagined. Still a member of the brave companions, the disgraced Maester Qyburn intrudes on the pair and fits Brienne into a flourishing pink gown. Jaime laughs at the absurdity of the giant woman in the dainty dress. Lord Roose Bolton, the current commander seated at Harrenhal, meets with Sir Jaime and allows him to carry on his way to King's Landing with an armed escort, but forces Brienne to stay behind as a prize for Vargo Hoat. Reluctant to depart from Brienne, Jaime leaves, but in his dreams, he cannot let go of the image of the Maiden of Tarth. Spurred on by his ethereal thoughts and met with irritation from his escort, Jaime returns to Harrenhal to rescue Brienne, who he finds still in her pink gown, fending off a bear in the castle's fighting pit. The bloody mummers cheer and jeer, hoping for an entertaining spectacle, but Jaime jumps down into the pit and saves Brienne from the ferocious beast. Together they escape, and in their flight, Brienne bites and tears off the ear of Vargo Hoat, which spells doom for the goat in the form of incoming infection and delirium. Now back at Jaime's side, Brienne rides with the Kingslayer and his escort, led by Steelshanks Walton, for King's Landing once more. While at the town of Brindlewood on the road to the capital, Brienne learns of her master Lady Catelyn's death at the Red Wedding, and is distraught. Still, though the one she serves is dead, her resolve is not, and Brienne intends to find and protect the Stark girls at all costs. Finally, the troop arrives in King's Landing, and both Brienne and Jaime find adequate accommodations after their rough travels on the road. Soon enough, Sir Loras Tyrell seeks out Brienne, still seething over the death of King Renly, and after Jaime convinces Brienne to fall under arrest for her protection, she meets with Sir Loras, and the two discuss the regicide with which they're both familiar. Brienne and Loras come to a mutual understanding that the former is innocent, and the blame placed on Brienne is now gone in the eyes of Renly's most devout supporter. Many horrific and important events come to pass in King's Landing then. Joffrey is to be wed to Lady Margaery Tyrell, Renly's widow, and for this Lord Tywin Lannister melts down the northern greatsword ice and commissions the creation of 2 new blades, one of which is a gift to Joffrey. The other, however, he gives to his son Jaime. Joffrey is soon killed, and his younger brother Tommen rises to the throne, but all the while Jaime believes the great blade his father gave him is just a mockery of the loss of his sword hand. So, Jaime passes on the blade of Valyrian steel to Brienne, requesting that she name it Oathkeeper. Brienne acquiesces, but Jaime has more to ask of her. He bids her to ride out into the country and find Sansa Stark, who went missing after Joffrey's death, and to protect her, thus fulfilling her vows to the late Lady Catelyn Stark. Brienne and Jaime reason that since Oathkeeper was forged from the same metal that made up ice, Lord Eddard Stark's great blade, Brienne would be protecting a Stark girl with Stark steel, despite the lion accessories adorning the sword. Jaime provides Brienne with all she'll need for her travels, including a signed letter from King Tommen declaring her on royal business, and Brienne sets off from King's Landing in search of a tiny, scared girl in a large, scary world. In A Feast for Crows, Brienne begins her search without any indication of where to start. While Sansa Stark sits in hiding as Elaine Stone at the Eyrie under Littlefinger's watch, Brienne seeks for her in the Crown Lands, following the Rosby Road. For a time, she meets and travels with the trio of Illifer the Penniless, Shadrich, and Crichton Longbow, but ditches them at the Old Stone Bridge. Wandering to Duskendale, Brienne stops briefly at the Dun Fort, where her shield is repainted with the arms of the renowned Sir Duncan the Tall, so as to drive less scrutiny toward her. On the road away from Duskendale, Brienne is tailed by Podrick Payne, former squire to Tyrion Lannister, and is permitted to join in her quest when the pair reaches the castle belonging to the Hollard family. The subsequent destination for Brienne and her new companion is Maidenpool, to which they're denied entry until a knight from Brienne's past, Sir Hyle Hunt, helps them get in. Sir Hyle commands the gate of Maidenpool, but before his current job, he was a part of King Renly's army, and coincidentally one of the men that teased and mocked Brienne in the royal camp. Bemoaning the tedious chore his life has become, Sir Hyle obliges in letting Brienne and Podrick into Maidenpool. The warrior of Tarth and her new squire find the town ruled by the iron fist of Lord Randall Tarly, who stands in the square dispensing justice. Recognizing Brienne from their former encounters, Lord Tarly beckons her over and asks her business, and Brienne informs him of their quest. Though still rough and irritable, Lord Tarly lets her and Podrick continue, and so the pair make for rest at the Seven Swords Inn. Once there, Brienne hears rumblings about a man who fooled a fool, and believing the fool spoken of to be Sir Dantos Hollard, she searches for and finds the Stinking Goose, a tavern where the occurrence was said to have been. Sipping on her foul wine, Brienne meets Nimble Dick Crab, the man who done the fooling. Nimble Dick promises to lead her after the fool, who she still believes to be Sir Dantos with Sansa. With her strange ally before her, and Podrick watching their backs, Brienne traverses Crackclaw Point, eventually reaching the seemingly haunted castle called the Whispers, the ancestral home of House Crab. As they study and search the remnants of the hall, the three travelers are ambushed by a trio of brave companions. They are Shagwell, the fool of which Nimbledick spoke, Timian, and Pig. The latter two Brienne cuts down with Oathkeeper, but the insane jester Shagwell kills Nimbledick before she can reach him. Realizing he is outmatched, Shagwell ceases his outburst, and Brienne forces him to dig Dick's grave. The crazed fool tries one last time to fight for his freedom, but Brienne cuts him down, just like his fallen allies. As Brienne and Podrick make preparations to retreat from the unnerving castle, Sir Hyle Hunt comes to them from the road. He stands bewildered at the sight before him, and insists on showing Lord Randall Tarly the justice dispensed this day. Brienne, however, wishes for no credit, as her quest remains incomplete. Nevertheless, Sir Hyle returns to Maidenpool with the heads of the brave companions and hands them over to Lord Tarly. Sir Hunt admits to his liege lord it was Brienne, and not he, that felled the monstrous mercenaries, and though impressed, Lord Tarly dismisses Sir Hyle from his service. Free to do as he pleases, Hyle Hunt joins up with Brienne and Podrick in their quest for Sansa Stark. Brienne's theory of Sir Dantos is torn to shreds with the realization that the fool she sought was actually Shagwell, but this does little to deter her. Seizing some new information from the former brave companions before she killed them, Brienne now determines that she and her allies must find the Hound, Sandor Clegane, who is said to be traveling with a girl. So, Brienne and the others leave behind Crackclaw Point and return to the Riverlands. Back at Maidenpool, they join with a hunched Septon named Meribald and his dog, named Dog, and start on the road to Saltpans, where the last major sighting of Sandor Clegane occurred. Just off the coast of the disgraced town lies the Quiet Isle, and Brienne and her company visit the location at the behest of Meribald. The Quiet Isle is a place of peace, prosperity, and repentance for its inhabitants, mostly Septons and pious males. Brienne converses with the elder brother of the Isle, who delivers more harrowing news to her. The man explains that Sandor Clegane is dead, that he buried the Hound himself. Along with that, he also claims that the girl with which Clegane traveled was Arya Stark, not Sansa. Her disappointments piling up, Brienne leaves the island with Podrick, Hyle, and Meribald, and treks onward through the Riverlands, though all her leads are gone. They soon make their way to the Inn at the Crossroads, the home of many important events in A Song of Ice and Fire, and see that it's now occupied with orphans, with Gendry serving as a blacksmith nearby. Meribald buys the group rooms with his wares, but before long, outlaws arrive, more former members of the disbanded Brave Companions. Leading them are Rorge and Biter, and a fight breaks out between the outlaws and Brienne. Though outnumbered, the Lady of Tarth slays Rorge, but suffers a gruesome injury to her cheek when Biter tears it apart with his teeth. Delirium sets in quickly, but before Brienne passes out, she sees above her the tip of Gendry's spear plunged through the back of Biter's mouth, killing him. Her last thought before unconsciousness is of Sir Jaime Lannister. While Brienne lays motionless, Lemoncloak and other members of the Brotherhood Without Banners return to the inn, surveying the scene. They allow Meribald to continue on his journey, but take captive Brienne, Sir Hyle, and Podrick. The three are set before the new leader of the Brotherhood, Lady Stoneheart, and Brienne finally awakens, reuniting with her former master. What remains of Lady Catelyn is nothing like her old self, however, and though Brienne attempts to explain her quest to the undead outlaw, Lady Stoneheart believes her a traitor, citing the lion decor of her sword and the letter signed by King Tommen in her pocket. The Brotherhood gives Brienne a simple choice: sword or noose. If she chooses the sword, Brienne is to hunt down and kill Jaime Lannister, proving her loyalty. If she chooses the noose, she and her companions will hang. Brienne refuses both choices, and she, Podrick, and Hyle are strung up to hang anyway. As their footing is kicked away, life begins to ebb from Brienne, and she cries out. Though not completely confirmed, it is believed that at the sight of Podrick choking, she calls out that she will take the option of the sword. When Brienne appears in A Dance with Dragons, it is for a brief but intriguing time. Sir Jaime camps at Pennytree, overseeing the restoration of peace to the Riverlands. Brienne appears to him there, apparently having been spared by the Brotherhood, and informs Jaime that she's found Sansa in the clutches of the Hound. Brienne says that she needs Jaime, and Jaime alone, to come with her back to Clegane and get Sansa, else Sandor will kill the Stark girl. Officially choosing Brienne over his own sister, Jaime abandons his post and makes off with Brienne of Tarth into the wilderness. The escapades and accompanying dangers Brienne finds herself a part of all result from her basic desire for meaning. Brienne of Tarth is an oddity in the world of A Song of Ice and Fire, a brutish figure more attuned for fighting and warring than anyone else. However, she is a woman, and yet her calling is performing the duties usually taken on by Westerosi knights and men-at-arms. Because she's so out of place, Brienne struggles to justify her position to herself and others, except through her prowess in combat. Still, that isn't enough, and true fulfillment eludes her. But when the War of the Five Kings begins, and everyone willing and able to fight is drawn to a side, an opportunity presents itself to Brienne. She travels to serve under King Renly Baratheon, the only man who ever showed her an ounce of real civility and compassion, and works to express her tireless devotion to him and his cause. Even after winning the melee, when she could have asked anything in the world of Renly, she only asks to serve as a member of his Rainbow Guard. By placing Renly's life in higher regard than her own, Brienne finds temporary meaning. However, the king in the south loses his life by way of dark magic and a brother's scorn, and Brienne's reaction is one of utter hopelessness and complete failure. While it's true she failed in her task as a member of the Rainbow Guard, protecting her king, she also failed her personal task, protecting the one man who'd given her purpose. The only other in the room during the unfolding event is Catelyn Stark, and with nowhere else to turn, Brienne pledges herself to the Northern Lady, pivoting to a new master and a new source of meaning. While Brienne could have used Catelyn as a means to escape Renly's camp and then went off into the world on her own, or even back to Tarth, she remains with Lady Stark in part because she still yearns for a source of requirement and achievement. If Catelyn needs her as a sworn sword, Brienne can accumulate tangible goals and tasks to accomplish, all distracting her from her backwards life. After joining up with the Starks, Brienne's life becomes one continuous quest, in service to both Catelyn and her former prisoner, Sir Jaime Lannister. Tasked with both transporting Jaime to King's Landing safely and then finding Sansa Stark, Brienne has little time to dwell on her immutable characteristics and interests that created painful memories in her past. In everything she's bid to do, Brienne puts forth maximal effort and carries her orders in the highest regard. Though who she serves changes, her resolve does not. Brienne is a social outcast, fitting in neither in the way she's supposed to, nor the way she desires to, and so pours all her hopes for contentment into serving those she deems noble and worthy of being served. In Westeros, and the world of A Song of Ice and Fire as a whole, Brienne of Tarth is one of the most genuine characters alive. Trading in dresses and gossip for swords and conflict, she is unlike almost any other warrior in the Seven Kingdoms. Her physical characteristics and chosen path earn her much mockery, and though she attempts to ignore it, Brienne knows how different she is. Because of her inverted way of life, she often throws herself at individuals she finds respectable, offering her sword in service. By carrying out the will of others, Brienne forces meaning into her life. Yet when the orders cease, so too does her fulfillment. Though Brienne embarks on a twisting quest throughout her journey in the narrative, her real search is a quest for meaning. So, that's all for this video. Leave a comment with your thoughts. I'd love to hear them. Leave a like if you enjoyed, and subscribe if you're new here. I'd love to have you. Visit my website, russellawellsauthor.com, for exclusive fiction and more. And sign up for my mailing list for free exclusive content. The links for both are in the description below. So, like always, I will see you next time.